Good afternoon. As we all know, Los Angeles continues to grapple with a tremendous escalation in gun violence. In the last year alone, 278 of our fellow Angelenos were murdered in gun violence. Almost 1,500 people, 1,499 of our residents were shot. LAPD recovered 30% more guns last year than the year before, and 20% of those were unserialized ghost guns. And this year has not started off any better. Just last week, our city was shaken with the senseless murder of LAPD officer Fernando Arroyos, who was just house hunting and bravely defended his girlfriend and himself. And then Alejandro Garcia, who was just doing his job when he was gunned down. We have in the city many causes of this escalation in gun violence that has these very specific human consequences. Those causes include the huge number of firearms that are on our streets. They're there as a result of a tremendous increase in buying in the last federal election cycle. They're there because ghost guns are easy to obtain online. The pandemic has helped fuel these tragedies. There's been an increase in stress and anxiety, disconnection and isolation. The pandemic has had a disproportionate, very negative impact on disadvantaged communities from an economic standpoint. It's closed schools. It's diminished community-based prevention intervention programs. We also have worsening gang conflicts. We have racial strife. We have reduced police resources and distrust between some communities and our police force. There are also a number of approaches that we've been taking in the city to grapple with these issues. LAPD's Community Safety Partnership, the city's Gang Reduction and Youth Development Program, other violence prevention programs, the Biden administration's focus on combating illegal weapons trafficking. There are multiple local legislative efforts to tamp down gun violence. We've seen ongoing prosecutions by federal officials, the county and my office, that relate to gun issues. Our office brought litigation against one of the nation's leading distributors of ghost gun parts and kits to try to stop the flow of those guns into our community. There are efforts to combat nuisances, problem properties of the sources of gangs and guns in our city through my office's citywide nuisance abatement program. We have a REACH program in our office that grapples with the impact of trauma from violence on developing kids' minds. We've had in the city many previous gun buyback programs, community education efforts on safe storage and other issues and other elements. But all those approaches clearly are not enough. I've worked for many years on the issue of gun violence prevention with partners here and across the country. And today I have a plan that I'd like to offer with 8 elements to it. I have sent letters that reflect this plan to elected and appointed officials in our region in both the city and the county. My plan falls into several different categories. The first of which is developing new teamwork across jurisdictional lines so we can better protect our residents. In that category, my first recommendation is that we create a cross-jurisdictional gun crime violence review commission. This is an idea that is modeled on an effort that was piloted with success in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which helped to contribute to a significant reduction in homicides. The idea is by getting a team together, the police department, the district attorney, my office, federal officials like the FBI and ATF, the mayor's office of gang reduction and youth development, other officials all at the table looking at specific homicides every couple weeks, focusing on a part of the city where gun homicide, gun violence is at its most acute, focusing on homicides and serious non-fatal shooting events, this team can identify trends, common factors, and look to see, given all that's happening, what patterns have emerged that will enable officials to then say, well, here are solutions that we can derive from these patterns, from these trends, from these community factors, and then move forward to implement those solutions. I've already had early conversations with our police chief and our district attorney who've displayed openness to this idea. We should also be working across jurisdictional lines in other ways. I propose we create a collaboration between the city and the county that's focused on community-based approaches to preventing gun violence. And here's what I mean. Gun violence is not just a public safety issue, it's a public health issue. And because it hits on both those cylinders, the city and the county each have resources, ideas, and authority to bring to bear. But we really don't systematically work together on these issues. Those resources aren't brought forward as a team. So I propose that we change that we have regular convenings across these jurisdictional lines. It can be housed in an existing entity. We could convene a group separately, but we would include public health, the housing authority. We would include public safety, and we would include education and youth development. We would include experts in jobs and in recreation. We would involve the community, and we do this. We would identify specific gun violence hotspots in our region, neighborhoods where gun violence is concentrated and escalating, and then identify the weaknesses in the community where we don't have enough well-being, weaknesses in community well-being that relate, for example, to the lack of access to health care, to nurses or counselors in schools, to good jobs, to other resources that are essential to a safe community. And then working across these jurisdictional lines, target pilot project approaches in these neighborhoods to see if that concentrated effort can help make a difference in the community in tamping down gun violence. In the city, we should create a neighborhood solutions program, and here's what I mean. We have a number of issues that we know confront neighborhoods. The park is no longer safe. There's a stretch of land that is often the focus of violent confrontation. There's a liquor store that is an epicenter of crime in the neighborhood. And the city contends with these issues. Often, city staffers work on those issues in silos, however, where really grappling with them requires working across jurisdictional lines in the city. So I propose that we have a citywide program that brings together both elected official staffs and officials from departments in the city, working across these jurisdictional lines with neighborhoods, identifying the most important community priorities and working as a team to solve them most efficiently. Next, we have to build on initiatives and programs that have been working. Now, the city, as I mentioned earlier, has a robust gang reduction and youth development program. It partners with violence prevention interruption programs all throughout Los Angeles. That's a program that has a pivotal role to play now. Now, President Biden put $5 billion into Build Back Better, the legislation that is now bottled up in the U.S. Senate. That $5 billion, if it were allocated on a pro rata basis, would give Los Angeles $50 million or so. But the legislation has stalled, and we don't have time to waste, not when gun violence is escalating in the way it has been here in Los Angeles. Now, in last year's city budget, city leaders allocated additional money for ambassadors and prevention and intervention workers in communities, to Friday Night Lights programs, to jobs for disadvantaged youth. And those were important investments. And I would say that now, with our gun violence emergency escalating as it has been, this is the time to deepen those investments right now. And we should direct that funding specifically to increasing the core of intervention workers and peace ambassadors on the street, to programming that addresses trauma in neighborhoods, to crisis response that offers counseling and support and builds opportunities for both direct victims and those who are cognizant of the issue in the neighborhood. And programs should get money only if they have demonstrated credibility with deep connections to the neighborhoods they serve, and tie members of the team tie those they're serving to comprehensive sets of services like legal services and job training and so on. I also think we should be building on a program in my office. I mentioned earlier the city attorney's Children Exposed to Violence program. It's called our REACH program here. One of the most under-discussed issues in public life today is the impact of trauma on developing minds. We know that children who are exposed to trauma that's often fueled by violence in their communities will never have their brains develop the way they were biologically destined to without an immediate intervention. And so our office is trying to break a cycle that will be incredibly corrosive otherwise to the development of these kids' minds. Now, when there's an act of violence in 2 different divisions in South Los Angeles, LAPD calls our team, which includes a therapist from the Children's Institute and a care worker, to the scene, looking for kids who are even cognizant that, say, a shot was fired, offering immediate therapeutic interventions to them and to their family, then coming back the next day and offering an array of services to help stabilize that family. I have seen the tenderness, the care that this team uses in interacting with families that have been devastated by violence, and it's very compelling. We should be expanding this program, and we're going to be aggressively seeking private foundation funding to do that. We should also be expanding something that will sound very prosaic to you, but it matters a lot. There was a recent study in Philadelphia that compared neighborhoods that have been crime-ridden. In one neighborhood, they didn't take care of vacant lots and other sources of blight. In the other neighborhood, those lots and sources of blight were cleaned up and beautified. What was the impact? A more than 25% reduction in gun violence in the neighborhood where beautification and cleanup occurred. That tells us a lot about the impact of that approach here in Los Angeles, which should be targeted immediately to those neighborhoods where gun violence is concentrated. Another set of steps we should be taking involves enhancing public safety resources. And in particular, I want to talk about the LAPD gun unit for a moment. We collaborate in our office frequently with the gun unit. And here's a great example. When, about 1.5 years ago, we saw through the gun unit that the gun unit had confiscated hundreds of ghost guns on our streets. We then followed with litigation against what we alleged is the source of those guns, a distributor of parts and kits. And our approach was, these are ghost guns, these are dangerous on our streets, they're unserialized, they're untraceable, they're rapidly becoming the crime guns of choice. So a couple years ago, LAPD confiscated more than 800 of those guns in criminal investigations. Last year, LAPD confiscated 1,921 of those guns. That underscores the significance of the gun unit's work. And I'm extremely sensitive to the importance of getting officers onto the street. I'm very cognizant of the resource issues at LAPD, but in this gun violence emergency, the work of the gun unit needs to be elevated. There's another piece to this that I want to conclude with, and it's gun buybacks. Now, over the years, I have noted that gun buybacks, typically in isolation from other programs, don't do a lot to tamp down gun violence. But it's also the case that in combination with a comprehensive set of proposals, there's research that shows there is an impact. They help reduce the number of guns in the community. They engage community members in the process of grappling with gun violence. They educate community members about the importance of keeping their guns safely stored. And they highlight for the public that there is nothing off the table when it comes to the reaction of officials to escalating gun violence. So I support that program also. As you can tell from the 8 points I mentioned, there is no single strategy that I believe can effectively grapple with gun violence. But if you take these ingredients together, along with other elements that are already out there, I think we can make a big impact working as a team on reducing gun violence that has subjected some neighborhoods in our city in particular to more than anyone should have to bear. And I'm looking forward to partnering with officials here in our region, listening to their ideas about how these ideas can be altered, modified, elevated, so that together we help protect a community that is in great need of every step we can take at this moment of elevated danger from gun violence. So I'm happy to take any questions, and then I'll speak. Let me speak in Spanish for a moment, and then I'll take questions. Ahora en español. El año pasado, casi 300 de nuestros vecinos perdieron la vida a causa de la violencia armada. La semana pasada, atendí la vigilia de un padre que fue asesinado a tiros frente a su hijo, mientras él solo estaba haciendo su trabajo. Un día antes, un joven policía fue asesinado a tiros mientras miraba casas en venta. Mientras que Los Ángeles sigue sufriendo de la creciente de violencia armada, hoy estoy enviando a otros líderes electos y nombrados en Los Ángeles mi estrategia propuesta de 8 puntos para ayudar a combatir esta seria amenazada a la salud pública y la seguridad de Los Ángeles. Mis recomendaciones incluyen reunir una comisión de revisión de violencia armada interjurisdiccional, crear una colaboración de la ciudad-condado para la prevención de violencia armada, realice inversiones adicionales inmediatamente en programas de intervención o interrupción de la violencia armada que hayan demostrado ser exitosos. Agregué recursos a la División de Armas de LAPD. Ampliar el programa REACH en mi oficina para intervenir con niños que enfrentan el trauma de violencia. Crear un programa a soluciones vecinales. Ampliar los programas de limpieza y mejoramiento de vecindarios. Implementar programas adicionales de recompra de armas. Aunque ninguna estrategia única es el antídoto contra la epidemia de violencia armada aquí y en todo el país, estos pasos tomados en conjunto ayudarían a que todos estemos más seguros. Okay, Rob, questions?
We don't have any questions at this time.
Okay. Thank you very much. I want to thank our partners at LA City View Channel 35 again for, as always, helping us get important community information out to the public. Thank you all very much.